Okay, I see a few popping on. If you can give me a little thumbs up. Oh, there's Mimi. Hi, sweetheart. Oh, that's so great. Oh, I'm so happy. I've got a new setup today. I'm doing it from my computer actually instead of on mobile. So this is really good. So I think I'm learning. If there are any glitches or you feel like the sound isn't quite right, if you can let me know, I'd so appreciate it because I know that mobile servers just have like such a limited view. So I want to make sure I don't get out of hola, hola. Oh, darling, it's great to have you here. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Maybe just give me a few little hearts in the chat, or maybe Todd Mackey, my sound guy, can tell me if he can hear me okay. Okay, I don't see how. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. I'm just making sure all is well before we get started. This is amazing. Okay. Wonderful. Welcome to the SoulFull Sessions Live on Sunday. We are talking today about ripples, sessions, and serendipitous connections. And so just to give you a little bit of background, for those of you, I see a few new folks on here and my screen is limited. So if you give me a little, every once in a while, I will actually pop full screen and just check and see if there's any comments. But if I think, actually, Todd, if you can give me a couple of hearts just to let me see if I see that on the new view, that would be amazing. And maybe it's just I can only see myself, so maybe not. Sorry for the technical fix. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, lighting is great too. Excellent. Thanks, guys. That's amazing. Okay, so welcome to the Sunday SoulFull Sessions Live. My name is Jennifer Mackey, and it is an absolute thrill to be with you on these Sundays for these conversations that I really feel the world really needs a lot more of, doesn't it? So today we're talking about ripples, sessions, and serendipitous connections. Welcome to those of you that are new to the SoulFull Sessions. This is something we do every Sunday. We actually have a newsletter that goes out on Tuesdays that kind of sets the tone and the theme for the week. And then on Sundays, we do a deeper dive. And so for those of you that don't know me, I've had the privilege for about the last 20 plus years of being a coach, a speaker. I'm the author of Just One Soulful Thing. I've had the pleasure all these years of consulting with and working with some of the most incredibly soulful leaders on the planet. I'm working in education and healthcare, working with entrepreneurs that are doing extraordinary things in the world. And probably most importantly, I am a mom and I'm a wife. And we homeschooled our boys for a number of years up until grade 10, until they went away into green spaces to be able to go to school. And we're going to talk about that more today. But we also launched something and started something about 17 years ago now called the Mad Hero Project. And that was about creating missions of the me and we kind that would cultivate heroism within the self, in families, and in close relationship, and then out in the world, and how we contribute to community. So all of this in the last number of months has become the Soulful Way. And I just looked up and saw the clock at 3:33. For those of you that know me, although I'm not a numerologist, those numbers, those little signs, more things we're going to be talking about today are always just so magical. So I feel like the universe said, yay, you guys, for pulling together today. So we homeschooled for those number of years and we ran the Mad Hero Project. And then it's morphed into this, the Soulful Way and the SoulFull Sessions Live. And really, part of the topic today is about AI and this world that's shifting. And so we're going to talk about why these sessions are so important. So thank you for joining us today. And we're going to dive right into what we're talking about today. So the topic for today is brought about because I've been noticing and gathering and setting intentions that have been manifesting of late. And I've been gathering information and noticing for a very long time, perhaps from the time I was a little girl, just how the world works and the shifts and changes in our communities and the way that we connect. And having a background in communications, I've always really been intrigued by how we communicate, why we communicate, and what it means, not only for our personal relationships, but in our business and how we conduct and serve and care for the world. And so things are shifting and changing. I'm not sure if you are feeling it of late. I would imagine that you are, that there are a number of changes that are happening in our world that make us feel a little uneasy, that the world is at such a rapid pace. And And really, we need only scroll for a minute to feel the anxiety that rises, and the conflict that we feel happening in the world. It seems to be at an all-time high, although depending on where you live in the world, some of that conflict and that feeling of that conflict is probably going on for years and years. But we're feeling it more in North America now, and there's a couple of things that are happening. So we're experiencing this, we want to be able to find it's at this all-time high. So uncertainty is prevalent, and many of us are searching for just that little anchor, a port in a storm, that feeling of just that sprinkling of peace, that connection to others of like minds, so that we feel sane. We feel as though we're not alone. And this is what I hope this space on the whole, SoulFull Sessions and the Soulful Way, provides for you. But today we're going to dive a little bit into what's happening here, because to be able to do something about what's happening, we need to be able to look honestly at it. In the words of kind of our Mad Hero project, it's about being a vigilant observer, about not turning a blind eye away from things that are concerning, because we need to look at them and to be honest about them in order to be able to shift and to change them and to be able to make a difference in the world. And so we need to be able to do that. So we're going to do that for a moment today. So no surprise, there's a disconnect in our society. We feel these constant distractions. Many of us don't even want to consider, and we certainly wouldn't want to admit, how much time we spend on our phones. And this rise of AI is this other concern that we're feeling, certainly as a writer and a creative person, as a creator, and working with many clients that are creative. This is a concern. We've known about this for years, but especially in the last few months. I'm not sure if you're feeling it in your own business, but it feels as though some of us are being replaced. And so it's hard to know where humanity fits into all of this, because it's not going away. It's not as though, we're going to say, okay, shut down AI. It's been going on for a lot longer than many people have actually been, understanding of it. And it's like when they came up with the idea that, well, there's this internet and we're all going to have web pages. And I remember at that time, my brother-in-law particularly was in, kind of that space of engineering. He was very aware of the advancements that were coming, and all of us just shook our heads and said, no, I don't think so. That's not going to take off. And now we look at our world now and it is. So that's that feeling of AI. And then this world of video games, which as a mom, of course, has been in the back of my mind for many, many years. One of the reasons we homeschooled was to just be able to set our own values or our own parameters around this, and to keep some of the things we're going to talk about today alive. And so this world of video games is it's something that, if you're of an older generation, we absolutely need to see how much it's shifting the world that we live in. In fact, I was visiting our son just a couple of weeks ago, and he was showing me this incredible game that he loves. He's at University of Victoria, but he was showing me this world. And I think that in some ways I've actually maybe avoided a little bit of diving into those games, because I've always had a concern somewhere in my heart of hearts that if video games are so spectacular and they make you feel like you can fly and you can, be on grand missions and you can change the world and you can engage in amazing, relationship, why would you want to live in the real world where it's hard? And so with our boys, we curbed that when they were younger, but it's a runaway train that none of us are getting off of. And so how do we reconcile that? How do we balance that incredible world? Because our son loves these games of stories and connections and the backstory of people. That's what he loves about it. And he's studying playwriting and writing scripts and understanding movies and the communication in our world now. But how do we reconcile that and balance that with the world that we're creating, so we don't want to escape? And then the downslide of community engagement is that other side of it, that the more times we spend on our phone, the more times that we spend, in video games and fantastical worlds and watching television, all these great movies, and we are inundated with information. Then there's this downslide of community engagement and the replacement of green spaces with strip malls and convenience. And so our world has really flipped. And I really do feel that we are actually, in many, many ways, at a turning point. And I'll tell you why I feel that. And spoiler alert, in the gatherings of late and experiences of late, I'm feeling that crack of open happening and widening. And so this is not going to be a down deep dive into all the challenges of the world. We can find enough of those. But it is about what's happening on a few levels and how do we shift and change ourselves, engage and deepen our relationships, and be able to, now that we know better, do better. And so this concept of ripples, sessions, and serendipitous connections started with some intentions. So way back in meeting, Todd and I knew a few. He's my partner, the love of my life. We've been together over 20 years. I think it's about 23 now. And he's my best friend in the world. He's my business partner. He's my partner in life and partner in parenting. He's on this call, so you can give him a little heart. And so way back when we met, at pivotal times in our lives, I was 31, he was 41. And I traveled, I'd lived in 3 different countries. I had become very clear about what my values were. And I was really quite frankly, I was ready to be alone. I didn't know that I would meet someone that I would want to marry. I've had lots of beautiful friendships and relationships, but to commit my life to someone for over 60 years and hopefully many, many more with all the advancements in AI and technology, that I would really have to be fundamentally aligned in values. And so right out of the gate, there were a few things that really connected Todd and I. One was adventuring and exploring the world around us and abroad. We really wanted to have an experience of life that was rich and meaningful and constantly expanding and deepening. And then we also wanted to wander into community spaces and meet new and interesting souls. This was really this is where we kind of kicked off our relationship. We have fond memories of going to a place called Fitzy's in the beaches in Toronto where we first met. We met playing beach volleyball. So there's a community gathering for you. We met playing beach volleyball. We would hang out at this place called Fitzy's. We loved the kind of Euro funky music playing. They had games on the shelves and books, and we absolutely love this atmosphere. And so right out of the gate, it's funny, I didn't really think about this until I was crafting the talk today, and I've been thinking about this in developing the newsletter, but it really started right out of the gate for us. And so, we really were committed to that, being in community. We've lived in 7 different places, 7 different cities or towns. We've traveled to many, many more. And we're always refreshing our intention and desire to expand our circle and welcome in new kindreds. And so at the very foundation of all of this is our intention. And I wouldn't say, although I seem, on a talk like this, that I'm an extrovert, I'm actually an introvert extrovert. So I do love talking. I do love being in social settings, but I need quiet spaces to refill my cup. And my husband, those of you that know him, he's a very calm and quiet soul, and he loves to be social, but he too needs that refilling of the cup. And so we always were striking that balance of, and we are actually talking about it with 2 people that I'll mention later today, and I'll bet you any money they're on the call, Alex and Milanka. And so we were talking about this delicate balance between independence and having that ability to be anonymous to a certain degree so that we can move about our lives in a peaceful way and not always feel the obligation to connect, but then being close enough in community to be able to connect, to be able to have that engagement, because we really do need that as human beings. And so our intention became to seek out experiences that would help us expand, connect, and also to educate ourselves continuously so that we're always in the know and finding the positive, not only to incorporate into our own lives, but to share on with others, because this world is ever changing. And if we want to stay as young as our spirits feel, then we have to keep our minds young too. And so we're always expanding. So we're just getting started on this journey, but some interesting things are coming to light that are prevalent for our talk today. So first, Todd and I are taking an AI course. It might shock some of you because I really do feel like as a writer, I'm one of, you would imagine that I'd be one of the first to hit. And it's happening here on Substack. You can see that a lot of articles are written by AI, and how we grapple with that, how we deal with that is different in every person's heart and mind, how people feel about that. And I'm not going to get into that polarizing view. I'm just sharing with you what our first toe dipping into the water of understanding how this works and how, because it has affected my job in the last 4 months, 6 months, maybe now. I'm noticing that, a lot of the briefs that I'm getting are coming from AI. The expectations are broader. The expectation to be on top of information that's in the know and the now it's necessary. What would have taken me hours and hours to do as far as research has now whittled down to sometimes moments or minutes, as I've learned how to be able to utilize this tool while not losing the creative element of who I am and how I want to share my voice in the world, and how important that is, that we don't lose that creativity in the midst of advancements. So here are a few tidbits that Todd and I have learned that surprised us, that, of course, serendipitously weaved into the talk of today. So I felt this grip and this angst in the online space. But we've been hearing these interesting perspectives, and particularly from a guy that we were listening to just a couple of days ago called Zach Cass. And he wrote a book called AI. He's an AI expert, and he wrote a book called The Renaissance Automation, A Human Guide to AI. And I must admit, heading into this talk, I wasn't sure how I would feel or what to expect. I tried to enter in, as I do with most of life, just openness. What is this all about? Where is it going? And so, how you feel a little crazy if you're ever reading these comments. So this is one of the things that really struck us. So you're in social media and you're reading the comments, and we're reading the discourse online now, and it's massively disconcerting. I post a lot online. I am very streamlined in who is in my space, my Facebook space. I do love dialogue. I do believe in democratic discussion, democratic thoughts and belief systems. I do believe in discourse. But there have been some elements of late where you're on either side of the aisle, and that can get really angry super quick. And it's a different energy in our world now. And so when I'm even looking at comments, because as a communications person, I'm always upgrading my skills, always upgrading and opening my ideas, my thoughts around this, and trying to remain open and trying to research and see what's happening without becoming embroiled. And so when I pop into comments, and I'm sure you've had this experience, and even this term that I didn't really know about, honestly, or really understood the concept of until a number of months ago, called doom scrolling. And I don't know why we would ever engage in this element of things, really. And there's a reason for that. So this Zach was describing this, he said, if you're feeling crazy and you're in this online space, let's just take a step back and a bird's eye view of this. And from a research perspective, let's look at our society. So 9% of us in the world, 9% of our population is antisocial, and 4% are psychopathic. So I don't know where that study's from, but Zach shared it. I'm sure if we dug into the research, we could find more. But overall, we are dealing with, in this online space, people that are antisocial and sometimes psychopathic, that have really major mental health issues. And then we just have what he calls the bad actors that take this form of access to people and they take it to whole new levels. And that's what we're feeling. Ironically enough, if you're a person who doesn't look at those comments, if you're a person who doesn't engage in those comments, you're the majority of the population. And that's why we're not seeing us online. That's why we're not feeling us online. But it feels like the world is like that. But that's just because they have access to us, right? And so he really gave this analogy that if you were in a neighborhood and you looked at 9% of your neighborhood and then the 4% of your neighborhood, and you were at a party, and you felt that weird energy, and you heard people speaking in a derogatory fashion, if they were being racist, if they were being rude, if they were being, calling people out, if they were shouting, you would just leave the party. You would just leave the party. You would feel that energy, you would feel unsafe, and you would leave. And we don't. Like, for some reason, because we feel safe, because we're behind, the wall of our computer, people will continue on sitting in that party eavesdropping, which is basically what's happening. But as we also understand in psychology, what we put in, we get out. And the more we focus on, we get more of. And the more positivity we put in, the more positivity we get out. And the more negativity we focus on, the more negative we feel, the more negative we put out. Right. And so we've kind of forgotten this because it's behind a wall. And um, so while Zach shares, so there's this whole idea of that. So we're going to talk about that and the positive around that and how to shift that in a moment. So first of all, we can walk out of the party, right? First and foremost, we can walk out of the party. We do need to become more conscious though. And as an AI expert, this Zach guy talks about, as did Steve Jobs, about the idea of having, an iPhone. And some interviewer asked him at one point, your kids must really be thrilled that you invented the iPhone. And he looked at them and said, my kids don't have an iPhone. Like, of course they wouldn't. Like, that's not for them. I'm not designing this for children. This is for adults as a tool. And so a lot of these people that are developing these elements behind the scenes, particularly, you've got this Zach guy who's an AI expert. He's traveled all around the world. He's studied this for years and years. He's worked with the top leaders. And he's talking about the fact that there are challenges in the system and how do we fix that? Because it's not going away. So how do we fix it personally? And then how do we fix that in the world and stand up for what's right? And so Zach also shares about the many powerful benefits of AI. And I won't get into it here, but I was blown away. The research that has been coupled with AI. He talked about a specific, issue with a baby that had a congenital disease that was incredibly rare, and that this healthcare company teamed up with AI, and they were actually be able to find the cure and to be able to save this baby. So there are always, with these tools that we use, there's grand benefits and there's a great responsibility. Are you feeling a superhero quote coming into mind? With great power comes great responsibility. And so he shares about this AI and how powerful it is, but it's not to replace people. And I really think like it strikes us. We feel like it's a takeover, and we've seen those crazy movies, right? It feels like the takeover, but it's not about replacing. It's about empowering people to work less and do more, to be more productive. And so that was a really important element. And then when I looked at it in my own realm, I've been able to do more since AI has taken over a research element, or when I need a structural tool for how to integrate all the different elements that I offer online. How do I integrate that and make that work? My business plan, how do I integrate all the elements that I want to offer? So I've gotten more efficient. And then in addition to that, I've also saved more time. And the only thing is that, so his argument is, if we create these AI tools that make us more productive, that give us more free time, we not only have to figure out our identity, because is our identity attached to our job and our productivity and the job that we have, or can we adapt and change? And also, if we get all this extra time, where are we going to put it? And if we just put it back into the phones and we scroll and scroll and scroll, then it's wasted time. But if it's shifted and we put down our phones, we can actually make great change in the world. And this is where this is going. This excites me. I hope it gives you a little bit of hope. I hope it inspires you to look a little bit more about that, because we're not really talking all about AI today. This is just that it weaves into this. So his take and his suggestion as a leader in AI right now ties into our talk, because he talks of investing back into the outdoor spaces and gathering spaces that we've put off for the sake of convenience. And also about creating laws that are very strict. And he's on some of these boards and consulting on with these lawmakers about how to shift this, that there are many laws coming into place that say phones are not allowed in schools, which seems to me a no-brainer, right? So phones not allowed in schools so that you can focus your attention at a young age. And then holding back on when you engage in social media. And there's a few countries, Australia at the forefront, that have put laws in place where young kids are not allowed to have social media until 15 or 16, so that your brains can develop, you can get some discernment. Ironically enough, when Todd and I were listening to this speaker, to Zach, and as he was telling us these things, we were nodding, and actually at one point we high-fived. Because with our children, we pulled back on the amount of electronics they would get at an early age. That was not easy to do, let's be clear. And then when we did put it in, there were restrictions that our kids would buck against, of course, because they're watching all their friends. And we took them into outdoor spaces every day. Like I'm talking almost every day of their lives. They were outside, rain or shine, doing fun things, going on adventures. We called it life school, not homeschool, for this reason. And so the great thing is, even though I felt very grateful to be able to flow with my instinct, my values, our values as a family, and engage in homeschooling, that's not for everybody. And as a society, we need to recognize these things are coming on and now, and make that change. So the other really important benefit in the other important point that he made was about what AI cannot replace. And we think, oh, well, it's just a matter of time. There's lots of people that have said that. But we really can't replace humanity. We can be responsible for the fact that that's true, but AI cannot replace humanity. We can counter AI while leveraging the benefits that it brings by being more human. And here's this guy who his whole world is based on AI development and technology. And the foundation and main point of his entire talk was the importance of us being more human. So right now, right here in this meeting, in you knowing me, a lot of you personally, knowing all my flaws, my truths, my ways, knowing that I'm real, these are the people that will lead the leveraging of AI into good places and spaces. So these intentions and these thoughts of late, this research, you can see the trajectory. Like we're learning and expanding and trying to understand our responsibility in all of it. And so these intentions actually sparked a conversation with a really beautiful friend of mine since I was 19, 20 years old, Arthur Perlini. He's a professor, Dr. Arthur Perlini. He's a professor. He's a former dean, the longest standing dean in all of Canada in his time. He's a renowned author and a consultant for high-level athletes, which I find super fascinating. We had these great conversations. And the irony is that, of course, these intentions are milling around in the background, but we just so happened to connect a few weeks ago on a conversation where he sparked the thought of, Jen, I'm doing this research and I'm studying this whole idea of kind of third spaces, which I'll talk about as third places, which I'll talk about in a moment. But he said, I'm studying these ideas of third places where, there's social connection, social meeting. And do you think these places are important? And when I was young and I knew Arthur at university, we engaged in the after hours club. We would wrap up the time at the bar or the cafe and we would go back to his place and we'd spread out the tablecloth. And quite frankly, at the time, we would smoke cigars and drink cognac and talk into the wee hours of the night with a small group of people. And we would ask each other questions ourselves. And then he said, there are these questions like, what if you only had 6 months left to live? Who would you talk to? What would you do? We would have these deeper, soulful conversations and gather. And he said, Jen, do you really think those places are still important? Well, that sparked some really incredible moments in the last few weeks. Just that reigniting of that desire, of that intention, of that vision, of that idea. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the research because what he shared with me was really, really fascinating. So Ray Oldenburg, who back in 1989 wrote a book called The Great Good Place. And so he explained 3 essential spaces in human life: home, work, and third places. And what third places is those cafes, pubs, parks, bookstores, barbershops, hair salons, places where community happens and why it's important. So it's important in his mind, in Oldenburg's mind, that it's about community cohesion. And this is like back in 1989, but his research piggybacks on others. I mean, this has been studied for years about this social community. John O'Donoghue talks about belonging in his Celtic words, in his Celtic tradition of how essential belonging is in our world. And so this is modern day belonging. So it creates community cohesion, informal socializing, right? That democratic engagement of conversations that taken offline can be in a human way, where you're considering and listening to another's opinion, hearing their soul, hearing their heart, and then offering your opinion, although it may differ. It increases mental health and its identity beyond our roles, so that we're not just the work that we do, but we're the people that we are, not only in our families, but in our communities. And so there was another guy, Mark Granovetter, and he wrote something called Weak Ties. So he discovered something super fascinating, that it's not our closest relationships that shape opportunity. It's weak ties. And I'd never heard this term before, so I find that super fascinating. So it's the weak ties, the casual conversations, the familiar strangers. The third places are where weak ties are formed, and those ties are essential for resilience, well-being, and possibility. Okay, so remember that term, weak ties, those simple conversations that can turn into something extraordinary. So there's another wonderful, researcher called Scott Galloway, and he talked about the modern crisis. So he's been talking about how these spaces are disappearing, which is no surprise to us. We're seeing it happen, right? Third spaces are being swallowed by that platform capitalism, right? Strip malls, new places, high rises. There's lots of this discourse going on in White Rock right now. And I'm sure if you live in a small town, that's a major one. As progression starts to happen, it's the tough conversations you have to have about finding the balance, right? So online social isn't truly social. That's the other one, right? So we think we're being social and it's lovely to connect. And I love these. This is great. I'd much rather be sitting in a coffee shop with you. And I have been sitting in a coffee shop or in your living room with a few of you on this call. And so this idea of it's wonderful to leverage this online space because we can reach more people, because one beautiful girl on this call, she is, and I'm just going to check the chat, but one beautiful girl on this call, Minerva, is in Spain, and she is a kindred soul from way, way back. And I would not be able to be in space with her today or be having quite these talks in the same way. And so that's what's magical about us being able to connect online. Oops, just going back to my screen. So if those of you, I see a couple new people joining, welcome to the SoulFull Sessions Live. I hope this is serving you. We're talking about ripples, sessions, and serendipitous connections. So what else is this about? So we're losing this. The autonomization of is accelerating loneliness. So this idea of loneliness, that we've got these devices, we feel like we're connected, but we're not really connected. That's why people are scrolling, because as long as they scroll, they're connected. But the moment they shut off that device or step out of that video game, they don't have a community of people to wrap their arms around them and make them feel connected and and a part of something. And so the loss of the public space, social space weakens our mental health. It weakens our resilience. It weakens our democracy, which is what we're seeing right now, because there's a lot of discourse online that is unhealthy. And that's putting it nicely. It's unhealthy. So much of our world is socially full online, but emotionally empty offline. This has not happened because the majority of us don't care. I think we get that, right? It's because the world has been designed away from gathering. But I really do feel, as I was listening to Zach, as I'm doing my research, as I'm having these engaged conversations with people that are really thoughtful, I feel like the world is waking up. Even the AI experts are waking up. The people that invented social media, it's been happening for a number of years. Those that invented social media, they actually stepped away and said, I had no idea what we were building when we created this addiction to dopamine hits that come in an online fashion. People, the designers of Facebook, the designers of Instagram, a lot of them stepped away and they're talking and educating about how do we put responsible regulations in place. And so we really now that we know better, we can do better. And it starts with us. So this change, we have to tend our own garden and not be shouting so loud about the need for society to change so much, because if we know that there's a change to be made, then we have a moral responsibility to do our part to change it. We can't just be angry about the fact this is happening. We have to learn and see the benefits and the pitfalls of some of these things that are coming upon us. And we have a responsibility. We haven't passed the torch yet. I don't think on this call right now, we've got anyone under the age of 20, but we haven't passed the torch to the 20-year-olds yet. We still have work to do because we want to leave them with a really great, balanced, beautiful, soulful space. And the responsibility is ours is to step up and do this for ourselves and individually and collectively as much as we can before we pass the torch on to the next generation. And so now we know better, we do better. So even our TV shows are showing this. And that's the reason for the word ripple in our title, is that there's a new show. It just came out in January and it's on, I forget what it's on. I think it's on Netflix, but it's called Ripple. And there's some mini drivers in it. There's some other incredible actors. But it's really designed to discuss and put forth the idea of the thread of mystery that draws us together and the power of belonging to survive and thrive, and the magic that happens when we're open, when we gather together and allow one another back into our lives. I really encourage you to watch it. I am not going to tell you anything more about it because I don't want any spoilers on that. But it is really beautiful. There were a few tears for Todd and I as we watched the show, but all tears of elation, tears of knowing, tears of sorrow for what they were going through, but really at the end feeling very peaceful about the fact that this is what's going on. This is what the Soulful Way is about. This is why I'm doing these talks for free and putting them out into the world and weaving them into my coaching and bringing forth the things I do with my clients and coaching and speaking and writing and otherwise, because that's where I feel my responsibility lies, is to learn about some of these things, to explore, and then to pass them on to you for you to implement them in whatever way you see fit in your own little beautiful world. So this is where the sessions and serendipitous connections come in. So we were dropping Nathaniel off at the ferry going back to school. And incidentally, you might be sensing a connection there as we talk about green spaces and they're going away. One of the things we focused on was getting our children exposed to alternative learning, even when they wanted to go to school, in areas and opportunities that they might otherwise not have. And so both our boys in grade 10 went to Saturna Ecological Education Center. And then now Nathaniel has chosen for grade 12 to go to Cortez Island Academy. The idea of being outdoors, about studying biology and the environment, about studying about First Nations people, where they are, about learning about small communities, both the beautiful elements of that and the challenges that arise when we are knitted together. And so he was off to school back for his last 3 weeks before he comes home and graduates. And Todd and I, in the spirit of constant and consistent adventure and trying new things, we said, we've always heard about Nanaimo. Let's go there and let's have a date day and hang out. And as we did, we parked and we went through the park and we took pictures of, the beautiful monuments and the waterfront, and we walked their little pier and we smiled at people along the way, stopped and petted dogs and chatted with people. And then along the walkway, we saw through the window this, those of you that know me know that I love high tea and scones. And so there was this beautiful little place that was ridiculously cheap, which in our world does not happen. And so I think the whole thing was like, for tea and scones and sandwiches, I think it came to $18. It was $11 for a scone and a tea. Like, it was crazy. It was $22 for both of us. It was amazing. And not only that, it was this beautiful. I actually will post pictures on the Soulful Hub, share a little bit more of this story so you can see the photos, but it was this adorable little place, very simple, and welcoming all kinds of people from the community in. And the beautiful Asian woman that ran it, she just was so meticulous. And, the sandwich was made just like your grandma would have made it. And it was just incredible. And so we talked with her for a while and then we moved on. And then Todd made this joke, because the reason why he might love or have an affinity for Nanaimo is that his favorite dessert on the planet is a Nanaimo bar. And for those of you that are Canadian, you might know what that is. For those of you that aren't, it's this wonderful, wonderful treat. that's like a bottom of chocolate and coconut, crust. And then it's got this wild, like custard, beautiful, sweet, sugary middle. And then the top is this layer of chocolate. And so they're really phenomenal. If you've never had one, you get your hands on one, you definitely want to. They're delicious. But as we're walking along, Todd says, "So, do you feel like we might be able to find an Nanaimo bar?" And I laughed, rolled my eyes, and chuckled because he lives to make me laugh. And I love that about him. And so we chuckled. No sooner did we get in our car and start driving to be able to kind of seek out what we might do next, because we love live music. So we're looking for a little live music action. There was also a World Junior Championship hockey game going on. So we were talking about whether we might pop in and saddle up to a bar and engage in, a little bit of Canadian rah-rah. Actually, the Finns lost. We were devastated, but Todd's Finnish. And so we were rooting for the Finns. And so we were trying to figure out where to go. And sure enough, we're driving along. And no joke, you think I wouldn't be surprised by now, the serendipitous unfolding in my life. Well, we look to the right, and there's this place called the Nanaimo Bar. And outside is this sign that says sessions, 4:30 to 6:30. Well, if you knew our family, wherever there is an Irish session taking place, that's where our family is. Like, one of the things that breaks my heart in North America that is not true for my beautiful Mimi, Minerva, on this call in Spain, which is not true, is that in North America, your kids can't go into a pub with you. So they can't be privy to live music. And well, if you're from North America and you haven't traveled a lot, that might seem shocking that I would want my child to come into a bar with me. But when I lived in Austria, children go everywhere parents are. They go everywhere. They don't drink at the bar, but they are everywhere with their families. They could never even imagine having a live session of music in their communities and the children being barred at the door. Like that, it just would never happen. And so when I lived in Austria for a year, I watched as these children would run around and play, and they danced to the music, and all the aunts and uncles and husbands and wives and, grandparents were all there engaging in community. And it was extraordinary. And so the only place we've been able to find to do that has been these Irish sessions that will take place. And usually in an Irish pub, when these sessions are happening, you actually can bring your children in. And so in Calgary was the last one we had been to, and our boys were up dancing. I have a great video of it, and they were singing, and we moved from Calgary, but when our children were there, they were talking to all the musicians afterwards. And one of the musicians said to our son, Liam, who was playing the guitar at that time, and I think he was like 10, and he said, "You should bring your guitar and come play with us." These community environments. So an Irish session, for those of you that aren't familiar, is that informal welcoming and gathering of different types of musicians that share traditional tunes of that Celtic, Irish, Scottish background for the joy of playing together, not for performance. So it's common in certain Canadian pubs and communities that these spaces are warm and welcoming. So you can imagine that when we walked in, we just felt that wave of homecoming. And there's something different about it. And I've not been to Ireland. That's our next yes list adventure we want to take our boys on. We're going to take our boys on, is going to Ireland. Todd has been to Ireland. When I lived in Grand Cayman, I had beautiful Irish friends, lived in the community with them. And there's something about that. And even the Scottish, right? My mother, my Nana was Scottish, Farquhar. And so I grew up with that Scottish thread of understanding. And so this whole idea of moving into these Celtic spaces, there's such a warmth and welcoming. So in we walk, and there's the beautiful hum of this Celtic music. And if you look at the video and watch the video in the newsletter that I sent out this week, you catch a glimpse, because I actually video recorded it. So you get the feeling of stepping into that bar and that feeling. The warmth of the wood, everybody turns and smiles and says hello. So we saddled up to the bar, and this gal came up to us and she said, "Welcome, this is your first time." And we told her the story about how we love these sessions, that we hadn't been since Calgary. And she just reached across the bar, put her hand out and said, "I'm Michelle. What are your names?" And Todd and I were like, Todd and Jennifer, and we were instant friends. So she recommends the special of the night, and she pours us a drink, and we sit and we're listening to the music. And then I pull out my camera and I'm taking these shots and videos of this incredible artwork on the walls. Very not Celtic artwork at all, but just magnificent. And so I'm looking at the detail and the cool, funky nature of this bar. And I'm capturing as much of it I can, and people sitting in snugs and small spaces and saddled up to the bar. And there's about 13 musicians, and they're all playing these beautiful traditional tunes. And just the energy and the essence of this place is magical. So I pull out the phone to take a selfie of Todd and I in this environment. And I don't love selfies, but this is the way of our world. But I do love capturing us in these moments. And so I pull out the camera, and as I take the photo, a girl a few stalls down, she says, "You have such a pretty smile, if you don't mind me saying." And I was like, "Aw," got a little red in the cheeks. And I said, "That's so sweet of you." And as I looked at her and she was smiling, I said, "You're so kind. That's just lovely of you to say." And I look at her and I said, "Ditto." Takes a sparkly smile to no one. And she started to laugh. And for the rest of the night, we hung out with Carly, with Carol, who we met. She actually had her mom had gone to these sessions every single week with her until she was 92, when we found out that her mom had passed away recently. We had these beautiful conversations about her life, about what she's been through while listening to this music. We talked to Carly and found out that she was the artist for every single incredible piece of art in this bar, and how her experience of living in Nanaimo in this welcoming space. Michelle works out in the bush except for Sundays because she loves the sessions and wants to connect in community. And so this whole experience was just magical. We felt like we walked away with best friends, and we stayed in touch, and everybody's exchanging numbers. And it's just this really delightful feeling. And we would never have had met those people had we just continued on our own, had we not wandered into that space. And so by the time we left, we felt that sense of family. And there were many more that we met, that their names escape me, but they're in my heart forever. And we will go back. It is like next time when we go actually to go pick up our son, we're already planning to go back and reconnect with these people. So it's not that saddling up to a bar is, like kind of new for Todd and I. As you know, I'm saying about Fitzy's, and we go and frequent the restaurants here in White Rock a lot. And we don't, like, sometimes we have a beer, a glass of wine. Sometimes, we have a cup of tea. It really is just about the connection. And during COVID, we did feel the buffer a little bit in our community, because we have so many outdoor restaurants that even when it was cold, we could just go to the outdoor bar and just sit outside. And so we connected with a lot of the locals. We got to know a lot of the staff, and Charlie's Don't Surf in White Rock along the main strip is one of our favorite places. The people there are just so warm and beautiful and kind. Uli's is our other spot. We just love those people. They make really funky drinks. We've frequented many. Ocean Beach. There's many along there that we go to that just really allow us to get to know the community, especially when we first moved here. And then we've gotten to find our favorites and kind of continue that along. Our son worked at Uli's. Our other son worked at Cosmos, which is a wonderful Greek restaurant where they have that feeling of family connection. It was run by a family for a number of years. They've since sold it, but they've upkept that atmosphere, that energy. I feel very fortunate that we live in a town where this is true, but I know not everybody does. So anyway, we had a really beautiful experience the other day because we were going for a long, long walk. It was very cold out for us. And so we walked into Charlie's, and there at the bar was Riley, this lovely girl that served us for for probably over a year. And whenever we pop in, she happens to be there, and we have this great connection. And so again, we just decided, instead of sitting as we often do, we'll kind of maybe have a little one-on-one time, but we saddled up to the bar and we started talking with Riley, learned a little bit more about her. And then it was her birthday the next day. So we got to celebrate with her. And none of these things would have happened had we not kind of put ourselves out there. And the last little one from our town that I wanted to share is that even though it's kind of an ongoing thing for me, so it hasn't happened in the last week, but One of my favorite places to frequent in White Rock is DC Crew Salon. That's where I get my hair done. So thank you for the do, girls. And they become my clients. But from the second I walked in that place, it's very small. It's quite crowded. They keep it small because of that community home feel. I go in, I get a cup of tea. I feel like I've just been welcomed into someone's living room, and combined with their expertise in coloring and hairstyle and helping my curls be curly, it's amazing how I feel in that space. And these are more of the places that we need to support, encourage, wander into, and make happen in our world. And they're in your communities, no matter where you live. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we can do more of that in a moment. But the last story I want to share, two people on this call, they are a part of this. This last week, our son turned 18. And so to fill his heart with desire, we said, what would you love for your birthday? And we're quite frugal as a family. Gifts are not our major thing. That's not necessarily our love language. But Christmas is not that for us. It's about sharing moments. And we buy a lot of things secondhand. This is the way we are, both with our clothing. There's a store in White Rock where I bought this beautiful little sweater. I really believe in recycling and getting beautiful things that are already out there in the world as opposed to buying new. And so when we said, what would you like for your birthday? He said, you guys got Liam a guitar for his birthday, and I would really love one. I'm practicing guitar. This is really important to me. And I really want to kind of deepen my practice and expand how I play music. And I'd really love an electric guitar. So, this is not new for me. I pop on and I'm looking through Marketplace to find the right one. We actually went to the guitar store, and Todd, that's his thing because he's a musician. So he helped Nathaniel kind of narrow down what kind of guitar he would like. And then I popped on Marketplace and I'm scrolling through and I'm trying to find the perfect one. And there were two. And the one was one that he really wanted. And he looked at it and he was like, it was the same guitar, but one was a darker red. And he was like, I think that's the one I'd like. Plus, it's closer. It's right down. We could just pop into, 15 minutes from our house. We could pick that one up. I want it to be easier for you. So we can just go with that one. There was another one that was in downtown, in Vancouver proper, which is about 40 minutes from us. And it was his second choice. And so I was working between these two sellers to try to find out, how we'd work out the timing. And for whatever reason, although I know the reason now, the person on Tuesday couldn't meet. They were too busy at work and they weren't going to be able to meet. And so we said, okay, I've learned a long time ago. I just flow with things. I surrender. If you've ever followed my work, I talk lots about the surrender adventure. Life is always unfolding for our best benefit when we have our clear intentions in place. And so I just said, okay, that's obviously not the guitar for Nathaniel, and we'll see if this next one is. Well, when we arrived in downtown Vancouver to pick up this guitar, the guitar was a no-brainer. It's gorgeous. Nathaniel is over the moon. But the people that we met were the real reason why we ended up there. So Alex opened the door to his apartment. He introduced us to his beautiful wife, Milanka, and we spent 3 hours having one of the most wondrous, soul-filling conversations, and we are now friends. And this is why we must follow our hearts to be able to go where they lead, to enter into conversation, to connect with beautiful, soulful people, and will allow that to be a part of the way that we live our lives. And so I thank you for being on the call. I thank you for expanding our community. One of the deepest longings of the human soul is for belonging. That's a quote by John Donahue. And we really want to be able to cultivate this experience consciously. Sometimes it happens like it did with Alex and Milanka in a very easy, soulful way. But sometimes we need to nudge it a little bit. So we're going to talk about practices, as I promised. So we're almost coming to the end of our time, but hopefully you have a little extra for the hour. But the first practice is the wander in. So no agenda, just being open, being social. If you're really an introvert, just easing yourself in. If you're an extrovert, diving right in, but finding new spots. So I just invite you as one of your first practices of the wander in, just once a week, enter a space with no agenda, just to explore. So maybe that's a coffee shop. I'll oftentimes just take my journal and head to the coffee shop. With Todd and I, it's okay. And, we're not going to head to the bar every week because that's not our way anymore in these older years. But even to go in for, a glass of iced tea or whatever it is, but to find your spot, go to a park, go wherever, find a space with the intention, the gentle, soft attention of, I just want to attune with the people around me. Just set that intention that whoever crosses my path today, I'm just going to smile. I'm just going to be in space with them. I'm just going to be open to whatever comes. So this whole element of wandering in, that can reduce our loneliness. That supports our emotional regulation, right? Of being able to have a simple general conversation. It builds a conversation ability, and it builds what we call those weak ties that led to our son having an extraordinary guitar that has the most harmonious, beautiful sound, and also two beautiful new people in our orbit, in our world, in our community. Practice number 2 is choose proximity. So when you walk in to the park or the pub or the coffee shop or a poetry reading, sit at the bar, sit at the counter, choose the communal table, linger a little longer, listen, pay attention, be close, no headsets. We tell our boys all the time, no headset. Even if you do wander on the bus or wherever with a headset, as much as you can, one little earbud in if you want to listen to your music or you're learning something. But be open, be free, be close, because that's where the magic can happen. It just allows that space for it to rise as it should. So practice number 3 is that conversational yes, along the trail, in line at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, wherever it is. Respond to those small openings. Give compliments. I never would have met Carly had she not said, "Don't you have a pretty smile?" I often open up talking about someone's cute little dog or the nice outfit they're wearing. Or if I overhear something, I laugh and say, "I didn't mean to overhear, but I understand," or whatever. That curiosity without being intrusive, but being curious and being open and paying compliments and talking, beyond the weather, and maybe not on the political realm right out of the gate. But whatever other subject, just find those little connections, because a community doesn't start with depth, right? Building that community doesn't start with depth. It starts with eye contact and a kind word. And so we want to engage in more of that. Practice number 4 is gather. Gather. Over the Christmas holiday, we have people to our home. We make a point of it. Even when we feel tired, we'll have a few kindreds come in and share. We went over to our beautiful Alex and Kat, our beautiful friends. Kat invited us over to her studio and for us to meet their daughter, Savannah. And we went over about a week and a half ago, and we just sat in this space, and we just shared soulful conversation and warmth. And for New Year's, we invited a number of people, and a number of people weren't able to make it. And those that did were the perfect amount for us to just have some soulful chats and have a lovely dinner with close friends. And it was just, it's the opportunity to open the doors for whatever may happen and whoever shows up. So inviting, not necessarily with an agenda, but having that warmth over making it all perfect, right? We just usually, this time we put out the spread for New Year's, but usually people just bring a dish. We make it low key. We have non-alcoholic beverages. We have alcoholic beverage, whatever people would like. And it's about the conversation and the connection. A number of years ago in Calgary, we ran virtuous suppers. We would have these dinners once a month where people would gather. And they would bring a friend, and then everybody would have to serve another person in the realm. So you'd have to pick a partner, and you would serve that person their food all night long. So you get to know their likes and dislikes. And then we would pick a virtue of the month. And as I was writing about this, I thought, it's time for us to start that again. So if you're in the White Rock community or you're in the Vancouver community, you can expect an invitation to one of those coming to you shortly. And I encourage you, take that idea, run with it. So what we would do is people would bring a dish, It can be something, it can be a family recipe with a story. It can be something that you bought at the grocery store because your life is busy and it's all good. Or you can forget to have brought anything and someone else will feed you. And then you come with this dish or not. And then we have this virtue that we pick for the month: patience, creativity, joy, contentment, tranquility, integrity, whatever that value is. We would then send out the invitation a month in advance and say, this month, try to pay more attention to how that value and that virtue shows up in your life and how you create it. And so people come for the dinner, they bring their dish, we serve one another, and then have just casual conversation at the end of the night. We gather in a circle and we talk about how that virtue played out in your life that month. And we did this for I think we did it for almost a year, maybe more. And the conversations, I can remember everyone. And these are the opportunities that we have before us. These are the chances that we can take. This is the extension of ourselves to be able to overcome what's happening in the world right now, to leverage the tools that we have, but not allow them to control us, to leverage them for good, for productivity, for peace, for more time, and then consciously choose where we put that time and where we apply it and how we engage with others. And the last piece that this Zach talked about, which I thought was really profound, is he said, get in touch with your local leaders to be able to expand and stand up for the spaces that are there, that currently exist, and for extending those that are available. Because we can't just put the laws in place to tell our children not to do this. We have to create an environment they want to be in, coupled with the restrictions that we put on for the best benefit of those young people. But we also have to set an example as adults in the community, because we can say, oh, it's the kids on their phones, but it's actually not. If you look around anywhere, and I took a picture once of 6 monks sitting around on their cell phones that blew up, but it's everywhere. And so the responsibility starts with us. The shifting starts with us. Change begins within. And so I just encourage you to pay attention, first and foremost, to where you're spending time. Where are you spending your energy? What parties do you need to leave? And what parties and places do you need to enter into? So I thank you for sharing your hottest commodity with me today, which is your time. I wish you ripple-filled sessions, both those in pubs and in your own home, with your loved ones, with new friends, serendipitous connections all along your way. And I really look forward to sharing more space with you in the weeks ahead. I'm thrilled to have all of you on here. I now am seeing your comments. Love seeing your face and listening to you, Mimi. Thank you, darling. Alex, just a treasure to have you here, and look forward to our many, many connections. And all those of you that were new, or if you joined us a little bit late, don't worry. There's a recording of this session that I will post on the Soulful Way, which is my Substack handle. You can also find us on Facebook at the Soulful Hub. There's always inspirational tidbits going there. I share clips of this, and you can also find me on YouTube at Jennifer M. Mackey on the Way. Thank you for joining me. I'm wishing you an extraordinary day in your extraordinary soulful life. Until next time. Bye-bye.